Starting a business? Put it in the right hands with LegalZoom. Because the last thing you'd want to do is let it fall into the wrong hands. With easy-to-use tech and 25 years of experience, LegalZoom offers personalized support to help ensure your business is formed accurately and complies with state regulations. So if you need a legal hand, visit LegalZoom. LegalZoom provides access to independent attorneys and self-service tools. LegalZoom is not a law firm and does not provide legal advice.
What's up, YouTube? Welcome to Maker Mayhem. My name is Ricky, and today we're going to be diving into some sculpture techniques, some things I've been going over for the past, I don't know, freaking year, because I think that's about the amount of time it's been since the last time I made anything here on the YouTubes. And so I need to get some things loaded up real quick, and then we'll kind of talk about what's going on here. So over the past year, I transitioned from a previous sculpting job to now I'm once again working at an art foundry. I do a lot of 3D scanning, and I use those scans to come up with meshes that then get ultimately cast in bronze or stainless steel and turned into collectible pieces, monuments, you name it. Right now I'm trying to load up a few little projects that I've been working on, mostly as just some kind of preliminary stuff. So once I get all these pieces in here, I will tell you what the heck I'm doing here. Today we're going to talk about artificial intelligence, specifically in terms of how we make models with that. I'll give you some of my thoughts on that in general, but it's here whether we like it or not, so you're going to have to learn to deal with it in some fashion or form, or you don't have to. But the industry is going to adopt the tools that help them to be efficient. You're still going to need people who understand traditional methods, though. I believe that's, maybe I'm wrong on that, right? But that is my sincere belief, is that AI may be a cool tool and you can do all kinds of stuff super quickly with it, but it is no substitute for the human imagination. And to be perfectly honest, you can use your imagination in these tools to come up with some super cool stuff. I already uploaded that. This is one of my chief complaints with AI, or specifically, I think with the output formats. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, and there's a better way to label these things, but I have not found that yet. So it is what it is. All right. Okay. So, what are we looking at here? Um, Let me kind of take a step back a little bit. We're going to load up a file that I started working on. Let's see. All right. We're going to load that up, and then we're going to load one more, and then we'll be ready to get cracking. Sorry. I should have come more prepared. Okay. Let's talk about sculpture, the history of sculpture, how we got here, and where maybe we're going. To talk about, I kind of want to anchor ourselves in uh, reality, I suppose. So I believe the year was 1785. Um, the governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia reached out to the president of the United States at the time and said that he wanted to commemorate the first president of the United States, George Washington. And he said, I need you to find the best sculptors possible to be able to handle this. So the president reached out to Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin, who were canoodling out in Europe, specifically Paris, and they set out to find the top sculptor that they could find in the day, and that person wound up being Jean Antoine Houdon, and he agreed to take up this commission under the condition that he was allowed to travel to the United States and to study his subject face to face. So uh, Houdon set out across the Atlantic uh, to Mount Vernon, Virginia, where he spent a couple of weeks with George Washington himself, who at the time was, I believe, 53 years old. And he spent a great amount of time basically just observing his subject. He was observing, taking measurements. He ultimately took a life cast of his face, which he actually ended up bringing back to Paris with him. And with all this information, he then constructed a marble casting um, over the course of the next, I believe, 7 to 8 years. And that sculpture is now sitting in the rotunda of the Capitol building in the state of Virginia. That was a mouthful. Okay, so this sculpture right here that you're seeing on your screen is actually Houdon's basically proof of concept, or basically, this is something that he left as a gift to George Washington, and to basically show, hey, um, this is what I have understood of my study of you, basically. And so that is still available to be seen. And this is actually taken from a scan of that actual sculpture. So I have printed this out on my Elegoo Saturn, and I have it sitting pretty close to me. And it's actually pretty cool because this is George Washington's actual face, as close as possible as you can get. And this sculpture is what almost 250 years old. Not quite, because America just turned 250 years old. But all of this was a great undertaking. This process to be able to make a likeness of a person required somebody to travel across the ocean with a crew to record information in order to be able to ultimately make clay maquettes, which they then use as reference to make reference models so that they can then turn around and point up so that they could carve in stone. All of this is just a process in the venture to create sculpture, classical sculpture at that. And those processes have maintained throughout the years. The West kind of lost some of that study, or it's not being taught nearly as much. It's starting to make a resurgence. But at the end of the day, the classical tools are simply classical tools. Nowadays, we have other things like scanners and photogrammetry, and we also now have artificial intelligence that is also in the mix. And people are using it. People are using it for business and for public art installations. I know for a fact because I've touched many of them. Um, so this is where we are. Uh, Sculptors today have a vast uh, array of tools available to them. You can work as closely to a purist from uh, as a Renaissance purist workflow as you want to, or you can work in a completely digital forum if you would like. Um, Now, people have all their thoughts about that, but those are their opinions, and well, everybody's entitled to that, I guess. Um, what I want to talk about today, though, is I want to show you some of the things I've been experimenting with and how I've arrived at this and how I've kind of approached, if I were to use artificial intelligence to be able to make a thing, what does that process look like? What are the kind of rules that I've kind of set for myself? And maybe there's something that you might be able to take away from that. Okay. So, I lied. I have one more project to to load up. Let's see. Where are you? One day, one day I will have this all together. There we are. Okay. So I'm going to load up a ZBrush project here real quick. And we're going to talk about this because this is something that I actually displayed this a couple of weeks ago at the Round Rock uh, Summer Arts Fest here in Texas with the Texas Society of Sculptors. And most of my sculpture is done with 3D printing, either something that I made in ZBrush or scanned, or you know, what I try to do is I try to run through traditional, or not traditional, but I try to make things look like bronze if I can. It's just the medium that I like, but there's all kinds of other methods that you can use. So I apologize if I wind up being a little bit scatterbrained today. This just happens to be the how my brain works. So here is my website, sculptworksusa.com. Um, and here's an image from my workshop. And here are some of my pieces. You can see here this Native American that I created. It's kind of stylized with a little bit of an Art Deco kind of vibe to it. This was all 3D printed. The entire piece weighs like a pound, but I did my best to try to make it look like bronze. In fact, the heaviest part is the base here, which is mostly unfinished just because that's where the piece is right now. But I can use paints that have bronze particles infused into it, and those bronze particles will oxidize and create a patina if you throw chemicals at it and force the rust to happen, right? Um, let's see, what else do I have? So I did this little decorative modernist horse, kind of the same process, right? 3D printed. These are held together by wooden dowels. Unfortunately, some heat has warped the base, but that's easily fixed. But I applied a texture to it uh, using epoxy, Avis epoxy paste, and just went to town, just adding marks and stuff to it. You can still see there's a print line that happened right there. If I want to, I can still go back and fix that, but most likely what I'll end up doing is just doing a reprint because that's just how I rule. But what ended up happening out of that piece that I was showing you in ZBrush is I ended up creating this right here, and I took it to the show, and I just kind of set it next to everything else. You can see right here, I have it just kind of seated right there. Um, and I just kind of wanted to let it sit there and see what people see how people responded to it, you know. And the cool thing was is that nobody knew that it was 3D printed. In fact, I had to sit there and be like, "Hey, one of these things is 3D printed. Can you guess which one?" Or not 3D printed. One of these things is done with AI. Can you guess which one? And nobody guessed it, which was interesting because uh, it gave me some good feedback to try and understand like how far can you push this. So I'm pulling up right now the model um, that wound up being or wound up being it. This was an AI model that was created based off some images that I plugged in, and those images were created here inside of ChatGPT. See if I can track them down real quick. I've been messing around with this a lot, a lot. Um, you can see I've been pouring quite a bit of energy into AI images. Where are you? I guess I guess it's a little further down than I thought. Maybe. We'll get to it. There's the wolf that I've been working on. Where are you at? As you can see, I've been up to quite a bit here lately. Well, credit, I don't know where that guy went. I'm sure I breezed right past it. Do, 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 do. Well, I don't know where it went, but the the basis of it is that I ended up creating a series of images that I wound up using as reference material for this piece specifically. Um, and I guess what I want to do is try and walk you through what you can expect if you were trying to make a 3D model with AI. I'll show you a couple of examples. So through a lot of these images, for instance, everybody was raving about Jimothy, the raccoon out in the northwest a while back. So I kind of plugged that in and came up with a quick little model of him. Super quick. Turn on the map cap, and you can see it gets information. Now, whether or not you like the texture, you think it's accurate or not, that's you know subjective to a large degree. Especially whenever you're talking about cartoony characters and things like that. This is the Mockingbird that I had worked on. But there are some challenges that I've noticed whenever it comes to, at least with Tripo 3D. Um, it's throwing these rocks in here. They're just kind of like, they look like bread. And then you see, some for whatever reason, it does these things with texture, creates these little pock marks. And I'm not sure why it does that. If I were to take this into a ZBrush or to try and finish it out, that's something I would definitely have to address. What's interesting is it did it here, but it didn't do it so much with this RAM, which is interesting. This one actually turned out pretty okay. There's a little hummingbird that I worked on. Now it has a texture map applied to, but if you turn it off, once again, the feathers look pretty okay. But you can see in terms of like the natural the tree branches and things like that, just does these weird things with the leaves and with the bark and all that. So if you intend to use AI for anything, these are things that you might want to be aware of. Like it can get you some really cool stuff very quickly. Like this eagle. This eagle would have taken me a substantial amount of time to get to. It's not perfect, but it's pretty well established. Like that nose, for instance, that's something would have to happen with that. So it's a highly stylized piece, um, but it's something. And one of the things I had to think about whenever I'm going through this and looking at things, try and compare what you see here versus what you see at, say, like the next time you go to Hobby Lobby and you see all the little things that they have out there. What is the quality of those items? Like if you look at them at all, these are things that people are actually buying. They wouldn't be putting them out there if they didn't think people were going to purchase them. Now, this guy, uh, well, I had a little trouble with what a fish looks like and how many toes a an eagle is supposed to have. Where's another one? So here's an interesting one. So I got to this point where I was going through a bunch of old sketchbooks, right? And I had a bunch of little ideas that I just kind of jotted down over the years. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna upload these images into ChatGPT, and I want to see if it can develop out my some of these ideas, these concepts I've had over the years. And so I had this idea of this big burly robot that was caring for a cat. Now, I never intended for the cat to also be a robot, but um, I kind of like the way that it wound up interpreting things. So this was pretty cool, but it gave me this, and it started from a little bit of a sketch that I began, and whenever I say sketch, it was more of a ZBrush sketch. So I had developed this far, and I, this was years ago. I developed this much. And I was like, hey, why don't you take this and see if you can uh, jump off from the vibe that I plugged in and see what you can give me. And so this was like the initial one, which I thought was pretty cool. And then I wound up breaking it down into individual orthographic views, which were then able to be plugged into Tripo, and I was able to wind up with this. I think there's a textured version here. Yeah. Now textures aren't phenomenal or anything like that, but for a super fast piece or something that might be used for like a tabletop game or something like that, it's not half bad. I mean, that's a little soft for sure. This guy has a lot of detail already there. Would certainly have to be cleaned up, but um, you know, you have to kind of pick your poison. There are a handful of other things. I had this idea for like a Mega Man or whatever. Uh, a lot of biblical influence. Santa Claus. I had this idea for this tough guy Santa Claus. Um, then there was this, I took a bunch of pictures of my dogs from over the years, right? And I was like, hey, because some of them are no longer with us. I was like, hey, can you make like a sculpture like showing them in heaven with Jesus and everything like that? So there's my dog Buttons, uh, giving him a peck on the face. There's my dog Odie, and all those other dogs. I never had those, but but I just wanted to show something like, if can I develop something that people would enjoy, um, and how far can I push the limits? And so what I wound up with this was this composition here with this series of dogs. We have Pomeranians, little cowboy corgi, and a bloodhound and everything. I was like, let's put this together and see if we can make a little sculpture or something. And so I got it to give me some orthographic views. And all I really do is I just try to tell it, hey, here's my idea. And then once I have that fleshed out, then I'll say, hey, give me orthographic views in the round. Sometimes it gets it right, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you'll tell it, hey, I want it in the round, and it'll give me a front, back, left, and right version, but you have to be conscious of what you're actually looking at, because sometimes it'll give you the left side, but it's actually the right side or something like that, or things will just like won't line up like they're supposed to. Um, and so you could sometimes wind up with some odd happenings. And so what's interesting though is that I took these and I dropped them into Tripo, and this is what it gave me. Uh, doesn't know what a dog looks like. uh, Jesus, well, doesn't look so hot there. He also has an extra foot. Actually has two extra legs and two extra feet. So it tries, but it doesn't. Um, it has some significant challenges. However, um, this is good for making a markup or a block in to try and get things to fit around. And what I ended up doing was like, hey, well, this isn't working, so maybe let's break it down into some other components. So maybe you can just give me Jesus by himself, right? And maybe I can take this and bring it into ZBrush or wherever I'm going to be working. Give me a character that's in an A pose, and then I can go through and make changes myself, right? Um, so there's that. There's a bust of the same guy. And let's see. What else was I going to show you? So over the past couple of days, I've been trying to think about some projects that I want to develop, and one of them is I want to start doing some pieces based on some, I try to stick with things I know, and I'm a Marine Corps veteran, and I like uh, the nostalgia of the old recruiting posters, and so there was this goofy poster from back in the day. I don't know exactly what year this was. I would have to dig to see whenever it was made. But uh, so they had these goofy little posters, and you got a Marine that's sitting there riding a leopard for whatever reason I don't know, but this is what they went with. Uh, so you get your travel and your adventure uh, riding on a leopard. Leopard's not very happy, but I wanted to take that concept and see what we could get, and see if I can turn it into like a little tabletop sculpture, and at least get some sort of block in material. So I threw all that in there, and I guess I've got to go back to some of the conversation that I was having with, there we go, with ChatGPT. So what I wound up with, let me let this load up real quick, is I initially start with just the overall view, right? And so I said, hey, take this. I'm gonna load up this image, see what you can do with it, right? So I loaded all these guys up, and then I just began with this first one, and this is the image that it initially gave to me, right? And it's not too bad. I mean, it's actually seems reasonable. He's got his campaign cover. Um, there is some weird stuff going on with his torso here. Um, so I needed to try and clarify some things. So somehow it wound up having him face the opposite direction. Um, then we wound up with this here. This is probably the closest view to what's actually depicted on the poster. And then I asked it to give me a turnaround, but then you can see it gets things wrong, right? And so you got to be cautious. You got a Jaguar with two rear ends. It's like weird, weird mutation of conjoined twins, right? Got this, has a foot for its genitals. And so what I ended up doing was like, hey, look, you're having trouble with this, and so is Trippo. So give me the individual guys, like down to, let me have the guy and let me have this campaign cover. Strip the Eagle Globe and Anchor off of there, and we'll just make an emblem ourselves. And then give me just the Jaguar. And then what we'll do is we'll take all that, plug it together, pose it, and make a composition out of it, right? And so that's where we kind of wind up here. So I've gone through, I've got these models, but they're certainly not perfect. And so you have to work with them. And I think there are some proportional issues for certain. Just looking at them, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know. It might be close. Certainly looks odd though. But I can use this as material to launch from, right? So I can take this model. He's almost a million polygons, but I can duplicate him and use this as a foundation to build out everything else, right? So I want to play with that for a little bit and just kind of walk through how I would go about using this stuff. And so I'm just going to dynamesh it at a reasonably high level so I can retain as much as this stuff as possible. There's certainly some things that would have to be repaired, like I would have to fix these buttons and all of this stuff on his trousers. Like these are all things that would have to be cleaned up. But the anatomy is usable. I would have to fix some things for certain, like his nose is something wrong there, right? But I'm a lot further along here than I would have been if I just started straight from scratch, right? Um, so my thoughts on some of this is, this is a useful tool. It can certainly help you get a leg up on things. Whenever I think about these tools, the people that I think about using them, I think about, the person that wants to, um, that would love to do sculpture but can't because maybe they have some kind of disability or restrictions, that don't don't allow them to get out like other people could, or um, you know, I think about accessibility and how people can uh, get involved with creating art. And I used to work tech support for Rockstar video games years ago. It was a contract job that supported Rockstar. Um, but there were all kinds of people who play video games. There are young people, old people. There are people who are stuck, maybe stuck in a wheelchair or something, and they all they want to do is enjoy life and have fun or what have you. And it's a way for them to experience the world around them. um, things like flight simulators and stuff like that. Like, I'm probably never going to fly a jumbo jet, but I have the ability to because there are things like video games, right? Um, and so I would say that the same is possible whenever you have tools available to you like this, um, that allow you to do a lot in a short amount of time. And what I'm doing here is I'm trying to address some of the anatomy. It doesn't seem like this is perfectly centered, so the symmetry is a little wonky, but that's okay. Like within a short amount of time, I can go through and clean some of this up. There are some anatomical things I will want to deal with. Um, In fact, I would probably just turn off symmetry, work this way. Another thing to think about is the scale at which you would be working. Like this guy, um, if I were to make a sculpture, I would probably offer it in, probably two different heights, maybe a 12-inch tall version. And whenever I say 12-inch tall, which is the whole scene, 12 to 24 or maybe 36 inches tops, unless somebody wanted something that was monumental, right? And all those things would come in at different price points. Um, and each of those things has a similar but different production method, right? So for this gentleman specifically, what I would want to do is you could use your transpose master, sure. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go through and isolate things by polygroups. And I'll do that so that I can go through and pose. And I'm certain that even this is the slow way. Like, I know you can break these models apart in Tripo, so perhaps I should have done that, but I didn't. And this is a guy that I probably could have mirrored and not really had much of an issue, except for the wardrobe, because you don't want to have, you know, you want your blouse to be matching up on the correct side. If I went through a mirrored, it would create some issues. So with that, I have a model that's now broken up into polygroups. I guess let me go ahead and break the head up. So we will break it into two parts. We're going to have the head. Then we'll have the neck. That way we can just have that level of control. I might even want to, I was thinking maybe I should extend that poly group all the way down there, but we're not going to do that. So the last little thing, I'm going to go ahead and break off the torso from the waist. And the reason I'm doing this is so I can pose it around. I guess I should probably also break up the arms. And you can get as detailed as you want to on this. All I'm doing is going through and just assigning polygroups. I should really probably break this down into some more manageable topology, because it's easier to make changes at a lower level. Okay. And what I'm doing here is effectively what I would be doing with like clay, right? If I have a clay model and I need to go through and reorganize it, I'm just going to start breaking stuff off of it, and I'm going to reposition and space it wherever I want that to be. Um, I do know that I want to go ahead and append the campaign cover, right? So let's go ahead and get that somewhat in place. That's gigantic. I want to look at my look at the poster here. Try and match this up. This should probably be closer to that size. We might need to adjust this a little bit. This is a little tall, I think, or the brim's not long enough. But basically, on the image, he's kind of got this thing a little wonky here. He's wearing it kind of like that. And we'll get it dialed in. It's not a hill to die on. When you're blocking something in, you just want to get super quick reference information. And I suppose I should have put that Eagle Globe and Anchor in here too. So what we'll do is append that EGA. Kind of the same thing. We're going to bring it up into place. And we don't want to be like too precious with this, because to be perfectly honest, this is going to be relatively small. But basically, this would kind of fit right about there. I suppose I should have plugged this in before I posed this around, and maybe I'll have to go back and readdress that. But for now, it'll do. So we have that going on, and then we need to bring in the cat. Well, the scale's pretty good, comparatively with the cat, between the cat and the guy, so that's good. I guess I'll go ahead and turn him around 180 degrees, so that way he's in place. I think maybe we should make them a little bit larger. Now you can see it's tried to do the little leopard spots. Um, I think it's reading that information maybe as like depth information, but it doesn't exactly do the best job. So we would end up having to come in and clean this up, um, which isn't a huge deal. It's just time, requires some time. So we'll do that, and then maybe we will come through and append this one just for the sake of having something available for reference. Now I haven't created the rifle yet, and one of the reasons was because of the results I was getting. Just kind of looking a little weird, so I'm gonna have to go through and research the exact model that is looking to be, and then I'm going to either model that or see what else I can find. So, but we have enough information here to kind of basically block things in if we want to, right? What are we looking at for time? Okay. So what I will want to do is take this guy, duplicate him. I never want to, um, please don't crash on me. There we go. ZBrush can have a little bit of an attitude. So I'm going to create a new folder. We're going to call it Marine. We're just going to drop that in there. I'll go ahead and make another folder for the for his cover. Then I'm going to make a new folder for the Jaguar. At some point, we'll wind up with a base. I might rip this base off. We'll see. But yeah. So the first thing I'm going to do is probably just go ahead and focus on the cat itself, because that's what the Marine is going to be anchored to. So I want to get that pose correct. So I'm going to go ahead and just hide that folder, hide the cover, and just work on this cat. Um, and I want to have a look at this guy. And I'm just trying to figure out like what this is funny because it gave him a boot on one side. No, it tried to give him, so it gave him cat feet. So it tried. Um, but here's what I'm gonna do. This is kit bashing 101. This has been going on since time immemorial. So whenever people are going through making models, they're just gonna take whatever they can get. Um, a lot of your Star Wars movies are made exactly that way. So I'm going to throw this in a folder. Let's call it comp, and then duplicate so that I can work in a non-destructive way wherever possible. And from here, I'm just going to start omitting things. I'm going to use my selection lasso, and I'm just going to start cutting things out. Might have my autosave a little too aggressive right now. Definitely going to omit this. We're just going to go geometry, modify topology, delete hidden. We're just going to keep going around and around and around until kind of eliminated the bulk of the rider. Delete hidden. Delete hidden. Now this is one of those areas where I'm going to have to grab this area, turn it into its own polygroup, and then kind of work around what we have. So I'm going to hide this. So what I'm going to wind up with is that happening. I'm going to go ahead and delete hidden, and then I hope that I don't get some massive freaking hole. So before I go any further, I want to make sure that I save this. All right. And then what I'm going to do is is I'm just going to do a Dynamesh. I'm going to reduce the blur. Let's try with just like 500 and see what happens. I expected to fill in those holes for sure. That's not a big deal. But I did lose some detail here. So maybe let's jump this up to boop, 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 doop, doop. There we go. Okay, so I have most of the form. I'm gonna have to fill this in. That's not a huge deal. A lot of it's just gonna be some reconstruction, you know. The ground that it's gonna be running on. We will exchange this out and actually sculpt some dang rocks. It's like my favorite thing to do. Not really. That looks so goofy. Looks like it got gnawed on by a T-Rex or something. We're gonna delete hidden, and then now we have at least the kind of the shape of the pose that I want to have for this guy. Now I can use what's already here, but I want to be mindful. Let's count. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4 toes on the paws. Push a little dew claw. We want to make sure that things make sense, right? Even though this is stylized, I want it to make some sense. I do like the little spots, the way that they are, that they're dented, that they're receding right. So I think I'm going to uh, follow along with that theme. I might modify that just slightly. I've seen some good examples of this with who's the artist? Jennifer Cook. Uh, she's Let me pull up some of her sculptures. She sculpts a lot of snakes, and she uses, um, from what I understand, she uses a lot of epoxy or a what am I thinking of? I think she uses epoxy sculpt or something similar. So basically, you have a set amount of time to make your thing before the material basically um, sets. But I've seen some. She has these pythons that she made that have the color changes. I think that's one for sure, but I was trying to see if there is another example. I guess not. Is there close up? Yeah, so she kind of does something like that, right? Where you have this change in texture to be able to account for the change in coloration. And so we'll kind of try and do something kind of like that on this leopard, um, because otherwise it's just going to look kind of goofy, I think. All right. So we got our leopard, our half-eaten leopard. He's in place. Let's turn off solo. Now we can use this guy here and pose him around and get him into place. If we want to. Trying to get to a similar scale. It's interesting how it chooses to apply textures. Like the form is certainly pretty dang close to where I want it to be for sure. Let's go ahead and solo this. And we're going to have to make some choices here. This is where a good understanding of anatomy would come into play. So we know that comparatively, there's going to be a big rib cage right up in here. So if we look at what is it, anatomytools.com, we can look at creatures and characters. They have a bunch of anatomy stuff. So I want to share with you everything that I find useful. So if you go to anatomytools.com, a lot of this stuff, some of this stuff is sold out, but there are creatures and characters, armatures of humans, animal anatomy. Do they have any cats? Yes. Now, I'm not about to go spend $145 on this, not today at least. But the cool thing is I can pull this up and I can look at it from here, right? I can kind of see, um, you know, uh, referentially the parts that I need to pay attention to. I don't know exactly what every one of them are called, and I don't need to be able, but I do want to be mindful of these things. You can see I guess those are the serratus, kind of like on a human. So you got the back strap that goes all the way down. So I want to have a look at this and then cross-reference it with kind of what I have going on. Is it useful? A little bit. But all we're really going to wind up doing is I'm just going to go brush. I'm going to add a quad sphere. And then I'm just going to move this around a little bit. Because this is exactly what I would do if I was working in clay. something else I'm going to do here in a moment before I go through and Dynamesh all this together. I'm going to split off that base, mostly so I can see. It'll help me to be able to move around much easier. All right. So we're going to go use my select lasso. Get rid of that. Let's go ahead and make sure we're able to see all of our geometry. All right. So this time, instead of deleting, I'm just going to split hidden. And that's going to allow me to have this guy separated. And then I can go back and resculpt some of this information. Right? Well, dang it. So we're supposed to work on this first. Okay. I'm masking this off so that I can isolate what I'm looking at. Now, to be fair, some of this is going to be covered up by a person, so I'm not going to hyperfixate on a lot of this being 100%. All right, so we're going to go ahead and weld all that together. Okay. Now, sometimes you might be in a position where you think that your smooth brush just isn't responding, and part of the reason why is because, well, we're working with a super high poly count right now. Okay, I'm looking at 2.8 million polygons, and so it's going to be a little difficult for it to work. But thankfully, ZBrush has some options under Spotlight. You get the Spotlight by hitting or Spotlight Lightbox. Lightbox is basically ZBrush's kind of file storage system. If you hit comma on the keyboard, it's going to bring you up all this information. It'll show you your recent projects, things that you've worked on that have had quick saves. Actually, you have a whole section of quick saves. You have these render sets, all these filters that you can work on, textures, and so on. The primary things I use inside of here is grabbing old projects, or this is a great place to store brushes, because if you don't notice, if you hit brush and B on the keyboard, it brings up your brush palette, at a certain point, you can have so many brushes on here that you can't even see all of them anymore. And I actually have run into that, right? So the way about that is to go ahead and load them into your file structure. And basically, you just find ZBrush in your C drive or wherever you have it, your project or your program folders, and you navigate into the startup, and you just make sure you drop those brushes in there. And so, anytime that you open up ZBrush, they should be available right here inside of Lightbox. So inside of Lightbox, these are already broken up into the individual folders. The vast majority of these came with ZBrush. There are some that I have added myself, like this orb brush pack. Um, but you can see over here there's a smooth brush section, and there are various types of smooth brushes. So I've grabbed smooth stronger because I have a high poly count. Now I wouldn't need this if I had busted this down into more manageable data, but I haven't done that yet, so it'll be okay. Now, what I'm trying to do here is just trying to eliminate all this extra stuff, so I might actually go ahead and do a remesh, but instead of 2000, let's do, say, something like 1200, right? Before I do that, I want to make sure it's all one poly group, and then I will remesh. Now I'm down to 1.5 million, and I think that's pretty good. I mean, it's maintained most of the the visual that I want to see, and look at that. Look at how easily that works now. Even better. It's not perfect, but better. Okay. So as far as this guy goes, I think I've got at least enough information to be able to block it in. Let me go ahead and bust this guy down. Let's use something like maybe a trim dynamic brush. I just want to get rid of you. I could zap it away. Here's one way to do it. We could use our select lasso. And then modify topology, delete hidden. Now I've got a big freaking hole. Do this again, delete hidden. And now I can remesh. Now I ought to fill it in. There we go. Okay. And I kind of want to do the same thing with all of these little areas. Delete hidden, remesh. Fill it in. And then, the thing becomes, okay, what other ways can you do this? So I'm going to do a clay build-up. And I'm going to kind of create a bit of a rake. So I'm going to use these lines. And what I want to do here is basically go from the high to low. So I'm going to start at the high and try to break it down. All right. And then smooth. And just keep going. smooth. And we'll keep doing that until you get kind of a semi-uniform surface. Just be mindful, you go too far, you got to build it all back up. But start high. Start on a high spot, go to a low spot. Sometimes it might help just to go over it with a smooth bit. And if you run into a situation where it's kind of like lumpy or whatever, you can just fill in that valley. So we're using clay buildup. So I can use clay buildup, or I can use just clay, and it'll go through and just kind of fill that in, just like that. Right? In fact, we can use this like a rake too, because sometimes it's hard to see. So if you add a little texture, you can kind of, especially if you have your lights on, set up correctly, it helps you to be able to really see what is happening with the form. All right, so that's dealt with. You can still see some of the faceting from the sphere that we dropped in. Right now, we're going to leave it as far as the anatomy. There are definitely some things that have to be changed here, but this is a block in, right? I'm not going to get lost in the weeds on this. So let's go ahead and turn off that Jaguar. And then this should be the guy that, yes, that we broke up into polygroups. Wonderful. So we're going to kind of try to pose him. Now, he was kind of on the back end like this. Let me have a look at our little poster. Where are you at? There we go. So he's more like centered. I think we may have to rear this Jaguar up a little bit more. He's kind of like, he's a little bit off balance. I would imagine that you would be. Had the stones to do this to a big cat. So we're gonna use transpose, the old transpose lines, versus using the gizmo. A lot of that's probably just because I'm more comfortable using the transpose than anything. We will rotate like so. anchor it closer to the hips. These will spread out slightly, so I'm going to put him like that, and then we will that doesn't look broken at all. You can certainly see that there's some things with the geometry that's starting to fall apart. We might need to really do that more. And then we'll probably have to bend this knee. This guy, let's try to rotate from where the hip bone would be, where that joint would be, right? Probably should have done that with the other one, but didn't. That's okay. Like I said, this is a blocking. We do want to make sure that we do have some understanding of anatomy, for sure. So we'll use our little mask lasso. And then we'll transpose from the knee. Move this around a little bit. Same thing for this side. I'm going to pick where the kneecap is, use that kind of as my hinge, and that won't work. That looks broken. Basically, what we want to do is we want to take this leg, and we want to rotate it. Just move it. It looks terrible right now, but once we get everything in place, I'm confident that it'll look fine. I do want to deal with the hip. I want it to be kind of facing this way. Then I want we'll have to work out the pose a little bit more. So we'll want to rotate this arm, and we want to use the elbow as kind of our hinge. Right? Now this is going to look weird, but it'll be fine once we get it in place. So let's block out this arm. I want to raise it just a little bit. So I want that to be elevated just a bit. And we'll move everything up to make it match. Got to take a call real quick. All right. Had a phone call to take, but I wanted to keep working as I was talking. Now, this pose is, I don't think it's the strongest pose, but it is what it is. So, I think already I know that I think I've been sculpting this whole time, and I've just been sitting here looking at, I had the wrong screen on. Trust me, I'm a terrible uh, live streamer. But this is where we are, at least in terms of the poster idea concept. This poster is based on this travel poster or this Marine Corps recruiting poster from back in the day. This one here. And so, trying to model around this. Use a little bit of AI to kind of help me out, get me somewhat of a composition. But there's going to have to be a lot of back end stuff that takes place. I'll have to dial in the scale of that campaign cover that he's wearing, and these clothes are going to have to be dealt with. We're going to have to fix the anatomy so he ain't got broken limbs. um, then we'll come in and dial in, remove some of these buttons. And we'll look at it in the round, because what works in one view isn't necessarily going to work in another. So I can already see here, I want, like, the Jaguar looks okay, but I want him to be a little bit off center. So I want to have kind of like a little bit of an S curve or something. Um, just a line of action, make it interesting. Same in all directions, basically. I want to make it dynamic even from the top. So we'll keep plugging away at this. So that's where we are on this block in. We talked about how we got there. The last little thing, I think that's probably going to be about all we're going to be able to cover for today. But sorry for the technical glitch there for a moment. But I think this is going to be a really nice piece once it's completed. We're going to have to think about things like, how is this going to be cast? Um, how many pieces am I going to have to cast it in? When you're doing things like castings, whether it be something for reproduction for resin or metal casting, whatever you're working with, you do need to be mindful of how you're going to break this thing apart, because, well, if you want to do reproductions, you're going to either be limited to, you're going to have to print one every single time and clean up that print, or you're going to have to make a mold. And if you're going to do any kind of bulk um, production, you're going to want a series of molds to be able to get this done, right? And so I think we're going to use this and another little project that I have in the works. This, let me go ahead and save this real quick before I forget. I also have this piece that I want to get dialed in. I'm going to be featuring this at, my intention is for this to be featured at um Museum Day out in Austin, September 20th. If you're in the Austin area, they have what's called Museum Day, and so you can go basically to any museum. I believe it's 100% free. Um, there in Austin. I'm going to be down at the Umlauf, the Charles Umlauf Museum. Um, Charles Umlauf was a sculpture professor down at UT for a very, very long time. And basically, he donated some property to be able to be used for the purposes of continuing education and sculpture. And so the Texas Society of Sculptors is going to be out there. We're going to have some displays. All the members are going to be out there showing their work. And so I've been working off of base mesh with this. One of the challenges with working with base meshes, whenever I say base mesh, this was a modular mesh that I got. I don't know where I got it, but um, the challenge is that if you don't work with it correctly, there all your stuff's going to look the same. Um, but it came in all these little pieces, so I'm gonna have to go in and like resculpt all this little stuff, which isn't terrible, but there are some of the posing is a little bit off to me, like his neck. There's something going on here that I've got to fix. Um, some of this anatomy here needs to be fixed. But the key thing is how am I going to make this thing stand up? Because I think that I'm gonna have this. My idea is to go big on this, so I'm thinking that this might be like a 36-inch piece. Um, but I want to have a base that is effectively um, a skull. So let me go back to my gizmo. Basically, I want the base to, one, absorb the weight of the cross with Christ on it. But then there's also the thematic side of things. So, you know, it's easy enough to, get your skull shape down. Um, but basically, I'm going to have to go through and build all this out, make it look craggy and rocky and a little bit dynamic. And so once that's all done, I'm going to run a print and we'll have it out there at the Umlauf. And hopefully, I have enough time to be able to do a patina. It's going to be a busy month. I'm going to be attending some workshops, some portrait sculpture workshops throughout the months of September and October. So I'm looking forward to that and what I'm going to be able to bring um, to the table with further information. So, yeah. Thanks for hanging out. I will try to make an effort to uh, make these happen a little more often. And wish you all the best. Have a good weekend. Take it easy. See y'all later.